The elders often say, there is no village without a fool, meaning that every village has one or two people who seem mentally confused. They have no children, no wife, and stay in the village all year round, jokingly referred to as the village guardians. Their presence may seem out of place, but in fact, it is not. Behind their apparent foolishness, they may have already seen through the mysteries of fate. Today's story is so bizarre that it might overturn your understanding of reality. I suggest you watch it together with the friend around you who has the most potential to become a village guardian. This is a true incident that happened in my hometown many years ago. One early morning, as Zhao Erhu and his wife had just gotten up, they heard cursing and swearing coming from outside. Amidst the commotion, Zhao Erhu thought he heard his own name being cursed, so he stepped outside to see what was going on. Only then did he realize that it was Li the madman from the village, squatting at his doorstep and hurling insults, accusing him of stealing things. Li the madman grew more and more agitated as he cursed, his words laced with profanity. The commotion quickly drew a crowd of villagers to watch. Hearing Li the madman's seemingly reasonable accusations, some in the crowd couldn't help but start discussing the matter. Hearing the murmurs from the crowd, Zhao Erhu was already quite angry, but instead of explaining himself to everyone, he gritted his teeth and turned back into the house. But Li the madman's tirade didn't stop because of this. That afternoon, unable to bear it any longer, Zhao Erhu beat Li the madman in the street. Fortunately, a few neighbors rushed over when they heard the commotion, or Zhao Erhu might have beaten Li the madman to death on the spot. Even after being beaten, Li the madman still wouldn't let up, shouting relentlessly for Zhao Erhu to return the stolen goods. After pulling the two apart, the neighbors approached Zhao Erhu again, saying that if he really had taken someone else's things by accident, he should just return them. But unexpectedly upon hearing this, Zhao Erhu immediately lost his temper. Seeing Zhao Erhu's unusual reaction, everyone couldn't help but become even more suspicious of him. At this moment, a villager suddenly remembered that he had seen Zhao Erhu acting strangely 2 days earlier. According to the villager, he had gone to the fields to weed, and by the time he was returning home, it was already getting dark. On his way home, he noticed Zhao Erhu squatting in the small grove on the west side of the village, seemingly burying something. It was only after Zhao Erhu left that he went over to take a look. It was a burlap sack containing several dead chickens and a dead dog. There were no visible wounds on the bodies. It looked like they had died of illness. At this point, Zhao Erhu's neighbor recalled that just 3 nights ago, he had heard the chickens and dog at Zhao Erhu's house making noise all night long. With all these strange occurrences together, it was hard not to find it suspicious. In order to get to the bottom of things, they went to find Li Fengzi after he had been beaten. But no matter how hard the two questioned him, Li Fengzi refused to answer. He just kept muttering that not everything can be taken, and if you take something, you have to return it. Hearing Li Fengzi's rambling words, the two of them couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. They thought that after a few days, everyone would gradually forget about this farce. But one morning, people suddenly discovered that Li Fengzi was actually kneeling stiffly in front of Zhao Erhu's house. He knelt there, sobbing uncontrollably, muttering things like, "There's no way to reveal it, but if you don't listen, there will be retribution." And after saying this, he started kowtowing on the ground. Then he got up and entered Zhao Erhu's house. A few brave villagers followed behind, but when they arrived at Zhao Erhu's house, they found that Zhao Erhu and his wife were nowhere to be seen. The house was completely empty. After searching all around, they still couldn't find any trace of the couple and inevitably began to panic. After some discussion, they concluded that Li Fengzi must know something, so they turned around, planning to look for Li Fengzi in the village. But to their surprise, Li Fengzi hadn't left. He was still squatting at Zhao Erhu's doorstep, quietly sobbing. After being questioned repeatedly, Li Fengzi finally spoke, saying that Zhao Erhu had taken something from the dead and was now facing retribution. After Li Fengzi finished speaking, everyone looked at each other in confusion and speculation began to swirl. However, just as everyone was arguing back and forth, a woman in the crowd suddenly spoke up. She said that a few days ago, while she was working in the fields, she saw Zhao Erhu and his wife digging for something there. It was right at noon with the sun high in the sky, which was an unusual time for people to be working. When everyone heard this, they figured the problem most likely had something to do with that, so they went straight to check Zhao Erhu's cornfield. Sure enough, as soon as they looked, they found something suspicious in the middle of the field. There was a pile of freshly turned earth on the ground, and a few curious people quickly fetched some tools and started digging along the mound. But when they dug through the layers of soil, everyone was left speechless by what they saw before them. Beneath the layer of soil, there was a coffin laid out, surrounded by walls made of old blue bricks, giving it a distinctly aged appearance. At that moment, everything became clear to everyone. It was likely that Zhao Erhu had taken something from the tomb and was seen by Li Fengzi, which set off this whole chain of events. With things having reached this point, everyone wanted to open the coffin directly to see what was inside. But at that moment, Li Fengzi appeared beside them without anyone noticing, and when he saw that they were about to open the coffin, he hurried forward to stop them. However, no one was willing to listen to him, and they went ahead and opened the coffin anyway. When the coffin was finally opened, everyone present gasped in shock. Inside the coffin lay none other than the missing Zhao Erhu and his wife. What was terrifying was that the two of them had died horribly, as if all their blood had been drained. Li Fengzi said he had already anticipated this outcome, but he didn't dare to say it outright. Afterwards, persuaded by Li Fengzi, everyone reburied Zhao Erhu and his wife, covering their bodies with earth once again. After this incident, Li Fengzi seemed to become even more deranged, and not long after staying in the village, he disappeared without a trace.